Here's what's going on. The polls show voters still split on impeachment. 47% of independents, look at this, now oppose the impeachment inquiry. That's up from 37% just last week. That's from a new Political Morning Counsel poll. Now, yes, 7 out of 10, according to an ABC Ipsos poll, say the Trump-Zelensky phone call was wrong, that the president ran through the red light. Let's bring in former Whitewater independent counsel Robert Ray with me now. Your reaction to today's hearings, is there a case for bribery here?
We don't bring impeachment proceedings or criminal cases based upon presumptions and assumptions. We just don't. And at the end of the day, what did this show? Are we seriously going to impeach a president over an alleged link between investigations in Ukraine and a desired meeting at the White House? I mean, seriously.
And that's what Sondland was. That's what Sondland was saying was the quote.
That's the bottom line import of his testimony. Beyond that, he's engaging in presumptions and assumptions. And with regard to the meeting at the White House, as much as the Democrats want to make that a big deal, Adam Schiff himself signaled before these past 2 weeks even started that they, were of the view that they don't have to establish the elements of a bribery case under the federal criminal law, and he's resorting to, as a default, common law bribery principles under the Constitution. Well, first of all, wrong.
Supreme Court has said otherwise,
and
right?
The Supreme Court, with regard to bribery, has said that a meeting itself is not sufficient to constitute a basis of an official act that would warrant satisfying a necessary element of the bribery statute. So the short answer is there's no bribery there. And with regard to anything more that he was able to suggest, it's not inconsistent with, ultimately, it took them forever and a day during the course of the day to get to this. He can only presume, and he can only say what was likely to happen. That's not enough.
Okay, but the media is saying bombshells, explosive. We're looking at this.
Well, they've said that every day for the past 2 weeks.
Yes, we're not looking at this with the prism of someone who's a Democrat or Republican. We're just looking at this clinically, antiseptically, just looking at it clinically. Do they have the goods? It doesn't look like they do. The hearings are not changing voters' minds. Looks like support for the impeachment inquiry has ticked down. Also, the viewership is ticking down. Watch this exchange with New York Congressman Elise Stefanik. It basically encapsulates what's going on. Watch this.
Did either of you ever have any evidence of quid pro quo? Mr. Morrison.
No, ma'am.
Ambassador Volker.
I did not.
Okay. But with respect to his concern about something improper, specifically, at no point did he come to you and say, I heard something that I thought was improper and was a crime.
Sir, I have no recollection of him doing that.
No bribe, no extortion, no quid pro quo, all the things that Ms. Stefanik asked you.
No, sir.
Okay, so you wonder how the Democrats can wrap it all up and deliver coherent articles of impeachment, because look what Ukrainian leaders have said repeatedly. There was no pressure from Trump. Okay, if the Ukrainians had no knowledge of the quid pro quo or bribery or whatever, there could be no bribery. Let's show what the Ukrainians are saying about this. Keep that screen up while I talk to Robert about that. What's your reaction?
If there's no pressure, there's no basis to believe that extortion was committed, so extortion's out the window. They've also tried to emphasize the notion that this was, in some sense, an illegal foreign campaign contribution, which is the value of whatever those investigations were. But what we heard today was that's not really what was being talked about. All that was being talked about was not the investigations themselves, but merely a public announcement, a press conference, a press statement about the willingness to conduct an investigation, which Ambassador Sondland explained was largely to make sure that the president was able to fix their position so that the president of Ukraine did what it is he said he would do as a result of his election.
Yeah, and
that is to combat corruption.
Sondland also testified that he thought it was just about Burisma. He didn't even think in his head it was about the Bidens. Let's look at this, what else is coming up. At least four. Let me back up. Here's the other thing that's happening, Robert. I want your reaction to Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, already attacking the legitimacy of the 2020 election. Here's her dear colleague letter where she wrote the weak response to these hearings has been from the Republicans, let the election decide. That dangerous position only adds to the urgency of our action because the president is jeopardizing the integrity of the 2020 elections. That's a stunning statement. How exactly is President Trump jeopardizing the integrity of the 2020 elections?
Well, as Jim Jordan said, was there ever a press announcement that the Ukrainians were going to commence an investigation? No. Was there any evidence that the Ukrainians commenced an investigation? No. Did they get the meeting with the president? Yes. Was the foreign aid released? Yes. And as things stand now, the investigation of the Biden's conduct is currently before the sitting U.S. Attorney in the District of Connecticut, John Durham, a nonpartisan prosecutor and a career professional who is going to determine whether or not there's any there with regard to the Biden's Burisma and so on and so forth. So I don't understand how that could possibly be undermining the 2020 election, unless you're prepared to say that a presidential candidate enjoys immunity from any investigation or prosecution while they're a candidate. That's obviously a notion that most fair-minded Americans do and should reject.
Robert Ray, come back soon.
Thanks very much.
This is going to be a confusing period for Americans. It was frustrating today. Good to see you for breaking it down. Thank you, Robert
Good to
Ray.
be with you.